think it really does need to become that movement as opposed to just a strategy. It needs to be part of the DNA. It needs to be like second nature. It needs to be the breath that we breathe. Within the book, I just go through a lot of different philosophies, but really it's all about the core of it is about understanding fundamentally what customer experience is. So our perception, our psychology, the reason we feel that we feel as customers, how things impact us, how this results in memory, how this is then cultivated as perception and then known as customer experience. And I think if companies can really embed that knowledge and understanding, not just at a leadership level, but throughout the whole organization, you're getting closer to be able to create a movement as opposed to just an initiative or a strategy.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Your Customer, Your Success. Today, we're joined by Katie Stabler, the founder and director of Cultivate Customer Experience by Design, and recognized as a global top 5 CX thought leader. Since launching her consultancy in 2020, she's been helping organizations transform their customer experience through her balanced and creative approach to CX. Katie brings a unique perspective shaped by her roots in the not-for-profit sector, her leadership of CX strategy at one of Europe's largest credit management firms, and her subsequent role as head of customer experience and member optimization at an international membership organization. She's a sought-after speaker and thought leader and the returning host of the award's International Customer Experience Awards. She's put all of this experience together for us in her upcoming new book titled CX-ism, which is due out very soon. Very exciting news. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. When is your book due out?
Well, all being well, before the end of March.
End of March. So we will keep our eye on that for sure. Absolutely exciting stuff. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. But I want to get right to it with your experience because, you know, most people say nothing says customer centricity, right? Just like debt collection. So how did that early experience shape your approach to customer experience?
True that, yeah. Debt collection and customer experience, they're not notoriously fantastic partners, but what a baptism of fire. You know, what a way to start my career. The way that happened is I spent over a decade in the not-for-profit sector, so specifically supporting customers in vulnerable situations, financially speaking. So really my role was to help people get out of debt, and it was all free support. I was the deputy chief executive of a very small local debt support charity. And unfortunately, we lost funding. It's a really hard environment, it's hard to get funding. But the non-exec director of my charity happened to work at this credit management company, the Europe's second largest debt collection company. And she recognized my unique experience in the flip side of debt collection and asked if I would come across in a customer experience role. And it was a brand new role for the company. They had not invested in customer experience before. They just got a CX director and they asked me to come on board as the CX lead, looking after both customer experience management and quality assurance. So for me, that split role, I think, is a good indicator that the investment wasn't fully there yet. They were treading the toes in CX.
Yeah.
But after a couple of years, that changed. I became fully focused on customer experience. And yeah, it was a challenging environment. But gosh, you know, very few companies need customer experience more than
Right. All right. I haven't had too much experience with those organizations myself, but I did have. I was chased for an ex-roommate of mine once, but that seriously, the challenging environments like that really do forge a different approach to customer experience, I think, because I've worked in some really not challenging in those environments, very kind of high pressure, a lot of money on the line, right? Daily environments that really forge your approach and you shape your thinking. So that's really interesting stuff. So let's actually get right to talking about your book and how, you know, that background has forged your approach and everything that you've kind of maybe synthesized together. You talk about CX not being just a strategy, but a movement you lead. So let's bring it up to the current. How can companies shift their mindset from viewing CX as kind of, you know, a department over here or kind of a checklist item here, or some surveys to look at, and how do they embrace it as a core movement in their organization?
That is a great question. And I'm sure as you know, Gary, there isn't an easy answer to that.
No,
The
that's why I asked
reason, yeah,
it.
how long have we got?
Yeah, right.
The reason I wanted to focus on customer experience as a movement as opposed to a strategy is because over my time working in customer experience, be that in corporate roles or be that within my own consultancy, I have just unfortunately seen so many companies put a fantastic amount of resource into an initiative, whether or not that's people's time, whether or not it's financial resource, bringing in new technology, delivering training, all of this stuff is great. It's fantastic. It's exactly what people should be doing. And if it's wrapped up in a strategy, even better. But so many of these initiatives are short lived because they happen, they're highly impactful, they get some short term wins,
Hmm.
and then they kind of peter off.
Right.
And then what a waste of money, right? What a waste. And customer experience is kind of a tricky industry anyway, in that, everybody knows we need good customer experience, but it is still massively under invested in within organizations. And we still see year on year that the customer satisfaction index, both in America and the UK, are low. They're not really ever getting any higher, or I think 14 all time low. So something isn't working. And I think the thing that isn't working is that we are looking at things in too much of a siloed way still. And I think it really does need to become that movement as opposed to just a strategy. It needs to be part of the DNA. It needs to be like second nature. It needs to be the breath that we breathe. People need to be thinking customer first. And how you do it, going back to your original question,
Right.
within the book, I just go through a lot of different philosophies, but really it's all about the core of it is about understanding fundamentally what customer experience is. So
Hmm.
our perception, our psychology, the reason we feel that we feel as customers, how things impact us, how this results in memory, how this is then cultivated as perception and then known as customer experience. And I think if companies can really embed that knowledge and understanding, not just at a leadership level, but throughout the whole organization, you're getting closer to be able to create a movement as opposed to just an initiative or a strategy.
Right, and you've actually beat me to the second question. That was basically it. What are the barriers preventing businesses from seeing these results? So it's easier said than done, right? So I think I'm not going to go through all the data. I have the stats somewhere, but the metrics are declining. It's not even so much that they're stable; they're going down, which completely baffles me with the growth of technology and the knowledge that we all have, and the methods we have of sharing this knowledge, what we're doing right now, just online and blogs and LinkedIn and um, even your awards ceremonies and your awards organization. There's so much to share, and people are sharing it, but things aren't getting better. So where where are we stuck?
I, when you dig into the research, there is obviously a lot of reasons as to why we're getting potentially worse. Despite the growth in the industry, despite the continually new people coming into the profession, despite the focus, things are not improving. And I think that's for a number of reasons. One, I do think going back to the whole strategy philosophy piece, I think we are too piecemeal in our approach. It's too
Hmm.
segmented. It
Hmm.
shouldn't just be reliant on a customer experience person or team in the organization. It really needs to filter throughout. But I think, and actually not just what I think, but what you're seeing in the research is customers are struggling to trust companies. And when I read that, trust was one of the biggest drivers of customer experience and has been for the last few years, according to the research. That actually really made me quite sad. Trust. Trust should be intrinsic, it should be standard, it should be basic. As a customer, we should be able to trust the company that we are purchasing products or services from. The things that drive customer experience and customer satisfaction should be the fun things, getting things absolutely right, seamless, frictionless, wow moments.
Right.
but trust. So I think it really shows actually how damaging industries are, not just any one particular industry, but actually how, as customers, we've kind of lost our faith in customer service and customer experience.
Yeah.
And I mean, the good news there is that it shouldn't be too difficult to build trust with your customers. You've just got to get the basics right, the fundamentals right. But I think that's really sad that actually trust is a big thing. And you mentioned, growing use of technology and the innovation and the sharing and all of the things that should be driving improved customer experience actually are probably going the other way for us. Growing
Right.
use of technology, there's going to be a drop before there's a peak, right? We're going to see people trying things and failing things, and customers are going to feel that. And that's natural, it's going to happen, but that's not going to help our hope in increasing customer satisfaction across industries.
No, right. I agree, and that's exactly the conclusion I'm starting to draw. That trust is not there because the human interactions are decreasing, and the technology, while wonderful and filled with promise, is still not there, and it hasn't caught up, right? And I think we're all seeing that, not as just professionals, but as customers ourselves. We see it all the time. Now, I've seen a few of your posts, and I've responded to a few of your posts. I think we were talking about checkout lines, right? On a
Yes.
post you made a week or two ago, which one of at the grocery store, I'm not too bad, but at the drugstore at CVS, it you touch it and the scale gets off balance and it's like you're stealing something, right? And whoop whoop, the light goes off and the manager has to come over every single time,
Yeah.
every time. And that drives me crazy. So I don't use it anymore. Everybody kind of has these examples, and I think someone termed it the fear of reaching out, the foro of reaching out to customer service now is increasing because, oh no, what's going to happen when I call, right? And I think you're sensing that yourself through. I've seen that through some of your posts.
Yeah, I personally have had more negative personal customer service experiences over the last 6 months than I recall to count. And not just, slightly frustrating or slightly annoying, but significantly time wasting. Frustrating to the point where I've actually moved from being a real strong brand advocate of this particular audio technology brand.
That's the,
And
yep.
just because of the terrible customer service, I don't think I'll ever buy from them again. That's 20 years of purchasing from one brand. Bad customer service, so bad, 6 months worth of bad customer
Mm-hmm.
service, that I won't go back to them again. And, I'm fortunate the clients I work with, I think, recognize this. And I work with some really fantastic clients. In fact, I was speaking at a company conference just last week, and they were releasing their vision and values around customer experience. And the whole conference was a customer experience focused conference. And I was there talking about emotions and how important it is. So I think, there are some great examples of companies who care and who are trying, but there are too many examples where,
Yep.
despite care or effort, problems are still occurring all too frequently.
Right. Right. And I just had an example with healthcare where I changed this new year. I changed healthcare providers and a plan, and I checked each doctor twice, okay, to make sure my doctors, my wife's doctors, my kids' doctors were accepting this plan. Sure enough, my littlest guy had an appointment at the doctor yesterday, and they said, "Oh, we don't take that insurance plan."
Mm.
Well, I checked, so I checked twice, right? So I had to go through the
Yeah.
whole thing, and me, having the background I did, figured out that basically the parent company put in that a section of plans were not to be accepted. Right? It was basically an operational error, and I had to
Mm.
figure it out for three different companies, being
And
being
that's
the
a
client.
job. You should be
Yeah,
paid to do
that's what I
that.
said. I said so. They called back, and I said, "Where do I send my bill?"
Exactly. I mean, you, you as a customer should not have to expend that level of
But
energy.
they were doing this, right? So I just
Yeah.
yeah, they were. We did, and what happened? And so anyway, so right, I hear you loud and clear. But let's get to some more positive results. Let's talk about how we're going to do this better, right? Empathy, we talk about a lot. I know you talk about that. In your experience, what role does empathy play in customer experiences, and how can we cultivate this empathy across the organization when we're doing is throwing technology at everyone?
Yeah. Empathy is a really well banded around term in our industry, isn't it? And I think
Right.
for good reason. Yeah, especially when we are talking about the frontline, I suppose. I guess I like to take it one step further, and as opposed to just talking about empathy specifically, I like to talk about sentiment. And I advocate strongly that for every single interaction you have with a customer, whether it be in-person interaction or a digital interaction, if you follow the 3S framework, you will develop sentiment. And empathy is part of this framework. But if you develop sentiment, you're engendering a positive feeling or emotion within your customer. And ultimately, we need to create emotionally engaged customers for them to be able to remember us and therefore advocate for us, be loyal to us, come to us in the future when they have a need. And the 3S framework is really, really simple. It's something that everyone can remember. It's success, satisfaction, sentiment. So if you can make sure your customer achieves success, like they want to buy a product or pay a bill or get a query answered, great, step one. If you can make sure they achieve success satisfactorily, which doesn't always happen, you can buy something but have a terrible service. But if you can make sure it's satisfactory, so the minimum that your customer expects, it's easy, it's quick, they speak to a nice person, they speak to a well-educated person, all of the things you just would hope for as a minimum. Tick, tick.
Hmm.
But the last one is where the magic happens. This is where we create that emotionally engaged customer sentiment. If you can make that customer feel positively about your brand, they're more likely to remember you.
Right.
And that isn't about these big things, like throwing refunds at people or discounts or giving freebies. It's not about that. It's not about massive wow moments either. It's just about making them feel like you care. So maybe it's a personalized response. Maybe they really can trust you. They feel that trust. Maybe they are a little bit surprised and delighted. That's all well and good. But ultimately, it's just making them go away and think, yeah, I enjoyed interacting with that company. I like that company. I love that company even. So this is where the empathy piece comes in, because obviously particularly on the front line, but even in customer experience design front up, you do need to have that level of empathy with the customer, because you need to understand what is important to them, what they want, and how to interact with them. But ultimately, if you can engage and create sentiment, then you're ahead of the curve.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And to follow up on the example I just gave you, the agent I was talking to at the insurance company is a mom looking for new care pediatricians for her kids, and looked at the same pediatrician group that I was a part of, and so she empathized with me and knows how difficult it could be, and took the extra steps to help resolve that problem. So that went light years in terms of my trust and um, respect for this new provider that I'm working with.
And
So
that's it. Just
yeah,
be able to resonate and
she
have a
cared.
conversation
She
on a
did.
personal level. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Just that personal connection and showing that you care um, is really so important. So um, let's um, uh, let's talk about bringing it all together. Well, we've actually talked a little bit about your background. We've talked about the book, but you've worked across all these different sectors, these different industries. Do you have any kind of universal truths about CX that you could share, that maybe you shared in the book? Now, I don't know exactly what's the book, so I only got a little snippet of it, but I'm thinking maybe you brought everything together, and I know you threw the three S's out there, which is wonderful. I've seen that. Anything else you have that's kind of a universal truth that we haven't talked about yet?
Do you know? I wish that I couldn't answer this so easily, because it's so obvious. But do you know what? Honestly, I've worked in telecoms, in SaaS, ICT, memberships, debt.
Hmm.
I've had a fantastic experience with working with lots of different companies, little and large, different geographical locations. Without a shadow of a doubt, internal communication,
Yeah.
is just one of the biggest barriers to customer experience and to
Yep.
operation in general. I haven't seen a company get it right yet. It's just, and
Yeah.
again, it kind of comes back to the piece around putting so much time and effort into fantastic initiatives, putting resource into them, and half the time, the benefits, the value of what you have done are not communicated widely enough to the organization. And if
Right.
it's not communicated widely enough to the organization, then you're not going to get that strong level of engagement. You're not going to get that buy-in. You're not going to get that cultural mind shift and change. So communication is just a huge one. And obviously, the bigger you get as an organization, the harder it is to communicate effectively. And there's
Right.
duplication, or people at odds with each other. Visions and values aren't understood the same in different departments. So the fundamental of getting communication, unfortunately, is my universal truth with working with companies. It's a
It
big
is.
part of what I strategize with.
It is, and I think we just hit upon a topic for episode number 2 because you're speaking my language there because that's what I did. Operations is a huge part of financial services, whether you're on the investment management side or the asset servicing side. And the bigger the organization, right, the harder it is to organize the chaos around you, and you run into that right conflicting goals, strategies, just not communication. But what we're talking, it's what we've talked about today, I think is all in a big leadership problem, right? Because it's leadership from the top that is going to help bring it all together, and then you have to practice leadership on your own um, when you're seeing these gaps in communication and maybe even objectives or goal setting. So I think a lot of what we've talked about comes right down to leadership. Yes.
Leadership, oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. And the difference between strong, visible leadership, which are actually, promoting the ambitions and the strategies that you're trying to achieve, versus the leadership that isn't, or that isn't doing it so visibly, is absolutely massive. I worked with a company at the end of last year, absolutely fantastic company, really strong leadership engagement. Even the non-exec teams were part of every single workshop. It was absolutely fantastic. And during that process, they didn't have a senior customer experience leader. By the end of it, they had hired somebody in-house, a brilliant woman, very customer centered. So I think will be fantastic at the role. But on our very first call together, where we were discussing, how she's going to move forward with the customer experience strategy, she said instantly, and this really resonated with me, that she felt like she was already complaining and picking things apart and kind of banging against a desk. And basically, what she was trying to say is that she feels like she's already going against the status quo. She's like, just
Right.
got this role. She wants to hit the ground running, but she already feels like she's been incredibly critical and going against what happens. And I think that's another thing, actually, when we're talking about leadership, particularly in CX, is that actually you do need to be very provocative, and you probably will rub people up a little bit along the wrong way,
Mhm.
because things, if they don't change, they're not going to improve. And with CX, it's all about change and evolution. So I think her concerns and worries are probably something that a lot of customer experience leaders feel and don't always have the support to overcome.
Right, right, and it goes. You have to have the buy-in from the senior leadership, and then you have to have your peers buying in and understanding the predicament you're in or the company's in, and so you have to create that awareness of the win-win situations, and it's not always easy.
No.
And that's something I've had to practice in my career, no matter where I was, across the board to obtain results for my clients who really it's success for the entire organization as well. So
Exactly.
interesting stuff. Let's try one more question. Maybe let's try to walk through an example. You're talking about in your book focusing inward rather than on customers being detrimental. We've talked a lot about that. So, do you have a concrete, just like rock solid example of where a company shifted its focus, kind of putting together everything we've been talking about here today and saw a significant improvement without obviously giving away any proprietary info or names?
Yeah. I'm actually going to lean into the debt collection company because
Yeah.
they made fantastic improvements in the couple of years I was there. Not accredited just to me. Usually fantastic team, and I mean organizational wide. But the one thing that they did that I think really moved the needle culturally, and they did a load of things, but the one thing that they did, customer journey mapping. So I know there's some eye rolls in the world of CX with the customer journey mapping, but I'm a huge advocate for it.
Yeah.
Not only because obviously it expands your understanding of what the customer experience actually is in reality versus your assumption, but For this particular company, it was all about the culture change. So when we first started the program, we would go out, our team, the CX team, would pick which journeys we were going to map. We would map them, we would create the output. They were all data driven journeys. So we could say exactly what was happening and what was good, what was bad, etc. And initially, not many people cared. Not many stakeholders got on board with it. People were busy. They already knew what was going on with their world of customer experience. But 2 years later, that program was still going. The team didn't have to go out and pick a customer journey to map because stakeholders were coming to us and saying, this is the part of the journey I'm accountable for. Please cast your magnified eye on it and let me know what's going on. And every month we would hold a forum where we would share the output. And all senior leaders were invited to this forum, particularly those who were engaged and had influence over the part of the journey we were mapping. And by the end of that time, we didn't have enough seats in the room because so many people were interested. So many people wanted to see what was happening. So many people wanted their part of the experience to be mapped. We had people who took ownership and accountability for actions. It was driving real change. It was just the place to bring a partnership approach together in a huge organization where we were siloed. We did all have our responsibilities. And it's just the best example I've seen personally of customer journey mapping have such a significant impact. And as I say, there was loads of other things that they were doing, including like a new VOC platform and program, and lots of things influenced the benefits that they saw. But customer journey mapping was just a game changer in that company.
Right. And it's all about the process, right? It's not just creating the map, it's the process and then keeping that current, right? That you can always refer back to it.
Yeah, redoing it to make sure in 6 months' time your improvements have driven the
Right.
experience in the way you want to, making sure you're applying the right measures and metrics because quite often we're measuring performance but not experience. So, yeah, we could have a whole two separate podcasts on customer journey mapping, in my
Well,
opinion.
yeah, no, it's something that I've never, well, I wasn't doing formally, and I was doing kind of off the cuff without even realizing it because there's so many different processes and procedures when you're handling these large investment clients and pension fund clients that there are different types of investments and everything's a little different.
Yeah.
And that process really could benefit a large financial services organization. And I wound up having to do it myself because you'd get questions from clients and, well, where is this process breaking down? Why is it taking so long to value our private equity investments or what have you? So it's definitely something we talk about, and some people might roll their eyes at it, but it's a very important process. It's the process that's important, not the document necessarily.
No, and going back to the whole, looking at initiatives or strategies as opposed to real movements, this is one of those things. A lot of companies will have a stab at customer journey mapping. They'll do a little bit, it'll sit in a drawer, nothing really will ever happen. Yeah. But going back to the CX awards, there was actually a telecoms company who I think took home a couple of awards last year at the UK CX awards. And one of them was for a CX customer journey mapping program. And they told me that they've mapped 645 unique customer journeys. That's
Wow.
how many different deviations of the journeys that they
Right.
had. And every one of those had an owner. Some of the journeys had
Mhm.
one owner had multiple journeys, but they took that really seriously. And I think, out of a lot of companies that we interact with, they probably know and understand their experience significantly better than many other companies that I come across because they've prioritized it.
Wow. There
It
you go.
blows your mind, doesn't it?
We
649.
so we have topics for two more podcasts following this one. We'll get right. Thank you for that. That's great. Great feedback and great advice for the audience. Okay, Katie, we are going to move to my favorite segment called Does It Hold Water? And this is where I ask our guests to be our resident expert witness for the day, our resident Mona Lisa Vito, so to speak. And I'm going to read a quote from a thought leader or someone well known. And you're going to decide whether or not this quote holds water and why or why not. So I have one for you today. Are you ready? It is from a
Mhm.
very well known and respected CX and experience management thought leader. And he has recently given his 10 predictions for organizational shifts in 2025. So I'm going to read you one of them. I'm certainly not going to read you 10. And they are predictions about how organizations will begin to operate differently in 2025. And this one for you is, are you ready? Bots with empathy, expanding beyond basic tasks. AI will grow adept at recognizing emotions like frustration and confusion, enabling bots to handle more nuanced interactions. They'll adapt responses in real time, managing tasks like troubleshooting and customer service with empathy. Example: an HR bot detects an employee's frustration with a software issue, adjusts its tone, and guides them step by step until the problem is resolved.
Hmm. Well, I mean, everything is pretty fast moving, right? And I
Mm,
like the thought of it. I do like the thought of it. And it goes back to what I was saying about the three S's: success, satisfaction, sentiment. So if a bot could truly achieve that, then wow, game changer. Um, but I honestly don't think that that's going to happen this year. I think there'll be
right.
attempts, and I think technology might be there where it is doable, but whether it's achieved successfully out of more than just one or two occurrences, I just can't see it happening yet. I worked with a company a few years ago, and they were looking at how within like self-serve and knowledge bases they were taking capacity into account. So one step further. So if you're a mum and you've got a child-free day and you're relaxed and you could get a piece of advice and you could cope with it perfectly fine, versus you're a mum with five children running around your feet, the internet's down, you haven't fed them yet, you're stressed out of your eyes, you could receive the exact same information but not be able to deal with it on that day. And this was a few years ago and they haven't got anywhere with it yet. And yeah, so kind of on that same basis, despite how fast an evolving the technology is, I just can't see it being widespread, successfully used this year.
This year. Yeah. No, I agree completely. When
What
I
about
read
you?
it, I said, yeah, this is very interesting. But this year, it can't
Mm.
look. I mean, it's got to be pretty sophisticated. There's more sophisticated stuff going on than I know about. But from what I've seen, no, not even close. I mean,
No,
not even close. So
they're
that
barely
go-
good enough now. Never mind that level.
yeah, right. Right. I've had it the past couple of weeks just finding errors in everything I'm asking. It's so
Yeah.
no, I don't quite see that one. So all right, good. That was fun. Okay, let's move to chip shots, which are short form, fun yet professional conversational questions. We try to get to 3 to 4, time permitting. And since you have written a book, I have to go with the book question. What is one book that has significantly influenced you professionally, personally, and how did it impact you?
Oh, one. That's so hard to pick just one.
I know. I've had most people say just one. Just
Just
pick
one?
one.
But instinctively, the book that's coming to mind is called Drop the Pink Elephant. And I will have to find out the name and send you it for the show notes of the author. But
Hmm.
it's by a relatively famous TV journalist. And the book is all about how the way we speak influences the situation that we are in, which seems really obvious, right? But it talks about how just the most minor use of slightly negative language can completely change the way in which we're framing our conversation. And going back to empathy and communication, I just found it was a bit of a groundbreaking book for me to read because a lot of what I do, particularly when it's involving the front line, is around how we communicate, how we talk to our customers. And it's just very simple techniques littered throughout the book of how to quickly and easily improve the way we talk, and how impactful the most tiny, minute changes in our words are.
Oh, you'll have to give me that one because I'm definitely interested in that. But I'm also a Tufts jumbo, so anything with elephants, I'm thrilled to take part in. No, good one because I think about that a lot. Even the simple. I've talked about this a number of times. The act of just using somebody's name in a
Yeah,
store. If you're a repeat customer somewhere, or it's the deli, the bakery, wherever there it is.
here it is. Drop the pink elephant. Bill
Just
McFarlane, that's the guy.
there you go. That's on the list. Awesome. Okay, so we've talked a little about your early career, but is there a particular experience or failure specifically in your early career that taught you a valuable lesson that you still use today?
Probably too many
Too
to
many.
think about. Too many, too many, too many, too many. talking about customer experience in particular, I think that the biggest setback that I had to learn from was just how important all of your stakeholders are in how successful what you're going to do will be. And I think I took for granted a relatively senior level role and thought that people would come to me. They would engage with me. They would ask for my support. They would buy in. And that wasn't the case. I had to, probably a few months down the line, it took me to realize this, but I had to go and knock on doors. I had to build those relationships. I had to understand what drove them so I could tell the right stories, share the right messages, and communicate in the right way. And just learn how incredibly important those partnerships are. And I guess that goes for any role, really, but I've
Mhm.
definitely noticed it more so in the world of customer experience. So
Yeah.
a setback is to not rest on your laurels and think those relationships will happen out of nowhere. You've got to go out and build them and make sure you're speaking the language of all your stakeholders.
No, absolutely. Yep. You got it. It's continual work and it's hard work. Good one. So I've been asking this one, and it's been a big hit. This new one with my guests. So if you could spend a day shadowing a leader or professional in any industry, who would it be, and what would you hope to learn?
Ooh, in any industry. So it's not an industry, definitely not, but it's more of a culture. I'd like to spend more time in Japan. And the reason being is that I feel like a lot of their culture is, without obviously purposely being focused on customer centricity, is very person centric.
Hmm.
They're very, very considerate in their culture. I read a book. I'm not going to pronounce it because my Japanese
Oh,
is terrible. But it's by Erin Nilimi Longhurst. I've got it right in front of me here. It's got nothing to do with customer experience. Yet when I read it, everything resonated in my industry and in the world of what we do. So not an industry, not a leader, but I'd love to spend more time in that culture. And I think as far as CX goes, unintentionally, the world of Japan has got it nailed.
yeah. That is interesting, right? That would be an interesting study, and I haven't even thought of that in terms of CX. So
Yeah.
that's an interesting one. Good one. All right, we're going to wrap it up. I ask for a piece of advice, but I try to personalize this. So you were, I believe, a quarterfinalist on, was it called Top Chef UK?
MasterChef for UK.
Master Chef. Master Chef,
MasterChef,
sorry.
yeah. It's okay.
Quarterfinalist. So instead of asking for leadership advice, we've talked about all that stuff. Let's go cooking advice. What is the best piece of cooking advice that you could share with the audience to help us kind of amateurs who are kind of hacking it up over there, pointing over to my kitchen?
Don't serve raw chicken. No, that's a joke. Of course, don't
Don't.
serve raw chicken. Do you know, be explorative. So I think the reason that I got onto MasterChef is I told them a story, and this is the gosh darn truth. I don't ever cook the same thing twice. Now, there's a tiny caveat
Huh?
to that. Occasionally I might make pizza again or tacos again. There's a
Oh,
few
yeah.
staples you can't get away from. But generally speaking, every single night I cook a brand new recipe. All of these books behind me, they're not customer experience books, they're recipe books.
Are they?
I am I'm obsessed with trying new things. So I think my advice to you would be try new things, explore, have fun in the kitchen, get different ingredients, challenge your palate, play around. I am the jack of all trades when it comes to cooking. I don't have an expert dish nailed, but I can tell you a lot about everything.
Oh, so yeah. So you go definitely. That's great advice because yeah, I try to work a few specialties and then I try to move along. So I'm not bad. I'm not great, but I finagle my way through a few things.
You
So
have some failures, but fine.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
You have some failures occasionally, but
Oh,
it's fine.
a few. I have one very picky child.
Oh,
The youngest eats just about anything. He's great, and the one of them's pretty big. So we're always cooking two or three different things. It's a
that
little bit
makes it
of
hard. That
a
makes it
little bit of
challenging.
chaos
Yeah.
in there, but we have fun with it. So great, great stuff. So I think we're gonna be out of time here, Katie. But Katie Stabler, thank you so much for being such a great guest. You have certainly a lot of things going on. So why don't you tell the audience where we could find you and your business, your book, etc.
Yep, you can find my website, which is cultivatecustomerexperience.com. All my details are on there. I'm very active on LinkedIn and Instagram if you want a bit of the behind the scenes of a consultant's life.
Hmm.
But yeah, please connect with me. Sign up to my book waiting list. That'll be coming out soon. And if you want to chat, just pop me a message.
Great. Katie, thank you so much for being here today. And absolutely thrilled to have had this conversation with you. And thank you all for listening into your customer success. Once again, we'll be back with more customer experience leaders and even some customer success managers I have lined up along the way, ready to go. So thank you so much, Katie.
Thanks, Gary.
That's all. Bye for now, folks. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We hope you found something insightful that will enhance your experiences and drive your success. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review and share your thoughts to help us improve the show. Don't forget to head on over to marracxhub.com for more ways to connect with me and learn more about experience management. Until next time, I'm Gary Marra, working hard for your customer and your success.